All right, we have looked at two different bacterial pathogens that attack the lungs. They're both weird enough and they cause enough other symptoms that we don't just think of them as pneumonias. So here we're going to see more classical pneumonias. And the differences between them aren't, it doesn't matter whether we call them pneumonias or not. I'm just grouping them in a way that makes sense. So, what we call pneumococcal pneumonia is caused by Streptococcus pneumoniae, or group B strep. And again, this is the bacterium that can cause meningitis and lots of other diseases. Streptococcus would be a widely feared bacterium the way Staphylococcus is, if Streptococcus were resistant to antibiotics the way Staphylococcus is. Streptococci tend to be able to evade the immune system to some extent, and they're able to cause these diseases. And so one of them is pneumonia. And pneumonia is serious. It's when there is an infection going on in the lungs, and the immune system is fighting it and not immediately winning. So a person would be experiencing fever. They would be experiencing a cough and pain. I mean, that's one of the first things. You know you have pneumonia when you cough and your lung hurts. I don't know about the other signs because I don't have a clinical background and I've never heard these, but there are apparently ways to detect this using a stethoscope and other devices. This kind of pneumonia is a major hazard to older people, and that's why we kind of push the vaccine that can protect people against Streptococcus pneumoniae. So what happens? Well, people will inhale the bacteria and it will attack their epithelial tissues, and that's going to lead to an immune response. So ultimately they can be coughing up blood if the endothelium have been damaged, and the bacteria get into the bloodstream. They can do things like infect heart valves or even get into the meninges. And so the bad outcomes we see, like when older people are killed by pneumonia, often it's caused by the complications or by the secondary things that happen, such as meningitis or endocarditis. This is what kills people after influenza. This is how influenza has higher mortality rates than a lot of other viruses, because it affects older people and they're already a little bit more susceptible to this pneumonia, but influenza somehow really damages their immune systems temporarily and makes pneumonia more likely. Streptococcus pneumoniae does live in the pharynx of a lot of people, and so it's pretty easy to catch from someone near us and or to just inhale from our own normal microbiota. And if influenza has made us susceptible, then we get pneumonia. The next type of pneumonia we're looking at is primary atypical pneumonia, and this is, I don't know, I don't take these terms like primary atypical all that seriously, but it's what is caused by Mycoplasma pneumoniae. So let's not confuse Mycobacterium with Mycoplasma. Mycobacterium is the genus that causes Hansen's disease and tuberculosis. Mycoplasma is not. So Mycoplasma are these fragile, weird bacteria that don't have cell walls. And because of that, this is the only bacterium I know of that has ever been made artificially. So some nerds managed to synthesize its entire genome and get these bacteria to grow in a test tube from spare parts. They were able to spontaneously generate from the parts of the bacteria. And the only reason they were able to do this, like they added proteins, they added lipids. The only reason this could ever work is because they don't have a cell wall to assemble. Because lipids will spontaneously form bilayers at certain concentrations. And so that happened. Right, so what does it do? What does Mycoplasma pneumoniae do? It is a milder form of pneumonia, and typically wouldn't cause the bloody sputum you might associate with streptococcus. I've heard the term walking pneumonia. College students, again, will get this. And that just means it's not so severe that the person is bedbound. So if the patient can walk into the clinic and walk out, they would wonder if it's this one instead of streptococcal. The next one is Legionnaires' disease, and this is truly bizarre. This is the only one we've seen that is not spread from person to person in outbreaks. This one is spread from a point source. So it is usually intracellular. It can grow inside protists, and it's often going to do that in water tanks. So it will grow in protists that are living in stagnant fresh water, and so stagnant fresh water can be found in building water systems and anywhere else where fresh water just sits. So yeah, if your hot tub doesn't get turned on once in a while, these bacteria can accumulate there. And if water is kind of shaken, little aerosols can be made, and you can inhale little droplets, and they would have these bacteria in them. So you're not going to get this from someone who has it. You're going to get this from inhaling tiny water droplets. It isn't going to be obvious to the person that it's Legionnaire's disease instead of one of the other causes of pneumonia. And it can be risky. It has killed people because of the immune response and because of kidney failure. And I don't have the pathogenesis for this. This is not it's not as well known as the other pneumonias. This was only discovered in the 1970s. And here we go. It was discovered in 1976 when at a conference of the American Legion, 100 or almost 200 people got ill and 30 of them died. And they found these weird bacteria in the building's air conditioning system. So we see something like 1,000 cases per year in the US. This could be a particular note to students at LCC because over the summer, when they shut down the hot water tanks, guess what grew in the hot water tanks? So over the summer of 2020, they weren't using any of the buildings, right? Colleges were all closed, and so to save money and greenhouse gases or whatever, they don't heat all the water. And so what I think happened at LCC, because I have to reconstruct this, I didn't work there yet, what I think happened at LCC was they turned off the hot water, and Legionella was able to grow in the hot water tanks. So in August, they detected it in the water. They were looking for it. I mean, they know this can happen, and so every organization that has a big water tanks has to test for it. And so they found it, and they treated it, and more details can be found in the curiosity slides at the end of this lecture. So we've reached the end of the bacteria of the lower respiratory system. Next, we will jump into the viruses. I will see you there.